Doo-doo-doo. All right. Thought we were done with this, but my baby girl, my bottom bitch, Jacob here, decided to make another video. So I'm only gonna do like the first like 10, 15 minutes of this because I feel like nobody gives a shit. But let me preface it with saying this. I encourage anyone to criticize my knives. I have no problem with Jacob criticizing my knives or whatever. Like I said, I encourage it. This is how you get better at stuff, is when people criticize what you're doing, and you, if it's valid, then you get better. My only issue with this is if you're going to criticize my knives as how they're sold, then you need to have a knife from me as it's sold. So you'll see what I'm talking about here, and you can make your own conclusions.
Back out here at the range, like usual. Today we are going to be talking about this blade from Steve Kalari Custom Knives, and we're going to talk about why.
While you're watching this, I want you to remember what he talks about and pay particular attention to the edge and the edge bevel.
I did not, and honestly do not, want to review this knife. I'm going to show you some things up close today. This will be mostly a fit and finish video, talking about quality, maybe giving you some alternatives, and then probably next week we'll get into a bit of testing. Stick around, let's get into it. Alright, so this is the Steve Carmelo Kalari Tried and True.
No. My name is Stephen Carmelo Kalari. This is the Steve Kalari Customs. See, there's a cute little play on words there, or on the initials. So Steve Carmelo Kalari is my name. The knife is made by the company Steve Kalari Customs. So
These were marked at $300 for sale. The fellow who bought this from me, I believe, paid $140 for it. And
see right there, this is the stuff that I don't understand about Jacob. The fella he's talking about, he's good buddies. He's really good friends with the fella that bought this. I don't understand how he could get this wrong. The guy that bought this is Heavy Set Tactical. He had it on his Instagram page. He showed it. He paid full price, $299 for it. I don't know why he says things like this. I can show you the payments. He paid me in 2 separate payments because he didn't have the money, so I had to hold the knife for like a week or 2 or whatever. It wasn't a big deal. But he paid the full price. I don't know why Jacob does this. He can easily ask John what he paid for it. I don't understand why he lies. Like, I don't get it.
these often sell around or above $300. This is CPM D2 advertised at 64 HRC with a behind the edge thickness of about 5 thou and advertised as having a hollow grind. So as I already mentioned, this video is going to be about fit and finish. The next video will be about actual performance, but this knife was actually even surprising to me when it came in due to the fit and finish. Now, with if you're familiar with Steve Kalari, it's probably because he has a couple of YouTubers who do a lot of work for him. Neves Knives.
Nobody does work for me. Nobody does any work for me. The only way that people do work for me would be in the same way that Jacob does work for the makers he's going to talk about in this video. He purchased knives from them and he's talking about them. Same with these other makers. They purchase knives from me and then they talk about them. Nobody works for me. I don't.
Actually has this to say.
I love Steve's knives. I hold him at a I highly regard him as probably the best.
The knife in that video right there is the exact same knife that was on the Blade Binge page that he's criticized. That is a prototype. That was a prototype, a rough prototype of the knife to get the materials and the overall look done. I know he likes to criticize the grind line on it or whatever, the grind height line. It was a prototype. It was exactly that. It was a prototype to get to send to the owners of Blade Bench to make sure they liked the size, the dimensions, the overall look, and then the other knives. Obviously, the actual knives that are sold were a little bit better than that, but okay.
Heat treater in the game, doing some of the best heat treatments and just doing incredible work. I've tested a bunch of his steels. I've even had people send me their knives, and I've been able to sharpen them and test them. They never even went in video or anything.
Now, of course, if you're educated, for the most part, the issue with this is that you really can't test somebody's heat treat, generally speaking, without breaking or damage. So if you're just testing edge holding, for the most part, you're only testing hardness and edge geometry.
Jared specifically said I've sharpened and tested. So you can absolutely draw dramatic conclusions on how the heat treat was done by how the knife sharpens and how it performs. You're not just testing the hardness. Especially when you're dealing with stainless steels or semi-stainless steels, retained austenite becomes a big factor that we try to, really the only factor that we really try to mitigate and control. So if a knife is done, you could have two knives with the exact same Rockwell hardness, but get vastly different edge retention results from them, even both sharpened, same test, same angles, same everything. If one has, significantly higher or even marginally higher retained austenite levels than the other does, which is a direct representation of how well the heat treat's done. Again, I know Jacob likes to say, again, he's never proved it, but he says that I make the claim that I'm like the greatest heat treater ever. I do not. Other people who have used my work say that I do a very good job. I will tell you I do a very good job. I've never said I'm the best heat treater ever. I've said the guy that I think does the best heat treats on the planet is Roman Casse of Casse Knives, Switzerland. And then Triple B Sean would be up there as well. I don't put myself in the category with those guys. I've said this 100 times, but Jacob wants to make me out to be this guy that I'm not. But yeah, you can absolutely tell anyone who's ever used or sharpened a knife. You do not need to damage the knives in order to see make the knives fail in order to see how well the heat treat's done. That's just silly.
So I did have actually higher expectations for this blade. Let's look it over.
Okay. I want you, do you see that? I want you to pay attention to the spine of this knife. Okay, the metal. You see that? Pay close attention to that. Okay? Pay close attention to what he talks about when he does this. And we're going to go back to this. Because again, Jacob could have, anyway, just pay attention.
And you look at the blade.
Hold on.
Now, with if you're familiar with Steve Kalari, it's probably because he has a couple.
At a very incredible work.
Of course, if you're educated, for the most part, you're only testing stations for this blade. Let's look it over. So this knife is unmodified. It is in the state that it came from Mr. Carmelo here.
Remember that statement. It's in the state that it came from me. This is exactly how the knife was given, came directly from me.
Now, except for the sheath had some issues. So the sheath was modified, and we will leave that out of things. And any damage to the finish on the blade itself, I will most likely attribute to the sheath itself. Maybe something got stuck in there. So we've got some difficulties here. I don't mind the handle finishing. It is a rougher finish, but that's what it was advertised as, and generally speaking, I don't mind that. Our first problem comes with the lanyard tube. This copper lanyard tube at the back wasn't chamfered at all. So in hand...
So this is impossible. That lanyard tube obviously has been press fit and epoxied in before the handles were done. just like the rest of the pins that are on there, they're all pressed in and epoxied in before the handles are shaped. I don't know how it would be possible for me to chamfer the handles and not chamfer and shape and radius the actual lanyard tube itself. It's a physical impossibility. You would clearly see it would be raised. Right? If I somehow, for some reason, decided I wanted to chamfer, I wanted to shape the handle around it. The radius, like the shaping of that, follows the curve of that knife exactly because they're shaped together, just like the pins are. So again, I don't know how I could possibly not chamfer those and chamfer the handles without. How would I shape the handles without touching that lanyard tube?
Especially you get any kind of pressure on this thing, you're going to notice that pretty quickly, especially in the left hand, oddly. I think one side's a little sharper than the other side. So one thing that you don't want is anything sticking out on your handle that is sharp. We've got glue seeping out.
Let's look at it. I wish he would show it better. I can't tell from this resolution if that's glue or if it is glue, it's 100% my fault, and I could obviously easily I would have taken care of that if I had missed that, or if that's water, or if that's just a mark, or who knows what it is. So I encourage Jacob to do an up close of this, and let us see the actual glue.
From the handle scales at the front here. But those, and we've got some scratching and stuff in the finish, like up here, that is not from Kydex. Again,
remember that scratching he's talking about said it wasn't from the Kydex. Remember,
on this channel, I really don't care about stuff like that. Here's what I do care about. So when you look at these
no, let's look. Let's zoom in.
plunge lines.
So, because Jacob won't zoom in on it, that's the unevenness of the plunge lines. Now, if you find that unacceptable, totally fair. But that's the unevenness he's talking about. Probably a 0.5 millimeter difference on one side to the other. Jacob's not showing this to you because I'm pretty sure he knows anyone would probably flag that off, would probably shake that off. It's not a big deal. Again, I do these by hand. And since I've sold this knife, I actually was taught a technique where my plunge lines are even closer than that. But that's done by hand, no jig, no nothing. So they're never going to be perfect, but I want you to see what Jacob won't show you. He's making it out as if my plunge lines are somehow atrocious or the knife's like it's clearly centered. But again, if that bothers you, 100%. You want to critique me for that right there? 100%. But I want you to actually see how off they are. That is a cosmetic thing. That is not one blade's ground different than the other. That is, I did not push that left side down that extra hair. I did not push it just that little bit down, which again is a skill issue. And I've gotten better at it since then. Mine are even closer than that now, but they're never dead perfect, but it's even a little bit closer than that.
You see how they're off right there? And you look at the blade.
So I want everybody. Now, this is where I got another issue. So what he's showing you here is the entire knife is tilted. It's not flush. And I'm going to tell you exactly why this is flush. Remember how I said earlier to pay attention to the spine of the knife? See, if you take the screen, you were actually to level it. The blade, the reason the blade is canting to the right in that frame is because the entire spine of the knife is canted to the right. It's not flat. It's not flush. So if the blade was flush, it would be standing straight up. Can you see that? And that's why I said to pay attention to the spine of this knife in the beginning, because we're going to actually have a video and we're going to look at how the knife was actually sold. Okay, so pay attention to that. That is not because the blade is ground off centered. And I encourage Jacob, he can take this very knife because there is a little bit of flat. And he can lay this flat on like a machinist block, color that spine with like either marker or some layout fluid, grab a height gauge, and I'll show him how to do it, and he can draw a center line down the middle of that knife and see how off that tip is. Now, I'm not claiming it's going to be perfect, but it's going to be damn close. What he's doing right here is, that's why I said pay attention to the spine, because that spine looked modified and it was chamfered off to one side. That's why the blades, if you look at the scales are also leaning to the same side. The whole knife is tilted. It's not just the blade. The entire knife is tilted. Again, critique my knives all you want, but do them honestly.
The entire blade is ground to one side. So much so that at this thickness, it looks like the doggone thing is diagonal. It's off like this. And so he's got it advertised here as a hollow ground blade. Let me just give Steve some props here. Not that he would ever reciprocate, but...
Why would you say that? You don't know that, Jacob. That's not nice.
Steve's been making it this point for about 2 years. This is a recent example of his work. And there's not a lot of makers that really work on edge geometry and thin edge geometry. And thin edge geometry is really easy to jack up. So props to Steve for trying to go that route. Now we have this advertised as being hollow ground. And if I can focus well enough here, on one side of the blade, we're either flat ground or convex ground. There's a little bit of light on either side, whereas on the other side of the blade, we have a little bit of light showing in the middle.
Okay, so I would love to hear why I would convex grind one side of the knife and hollow ground the other. I used on this knife, and nearly every single EDC knife I do, I use a 36-inch radial platen. That mimics, what that does is that has the radius of a 36-inch wheel. Okay, so it's a very tall, very long, very long hollow. Okay, both sides are hollow ground. Both sides are ground on the same flat. I don't know why I would do anything different. Jacob's being dishonest by using this ruler and not doing it properly. What he should do, and what I encourage him to do, is to grab an actual straight edge, something like a metal, let's say like a small metal ruler or even a credit card, press it up against it and then shine some light behind it. And you'll see that there's the same gap on one side as there is the other. He's doing it, again, why I would hollow grind one side and then flat the other, like switch platens to make my life more difficult is beyond me. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
So generally speaking, I would not call this knife hollow ground. I would probably call it flat ground. I find it interesting that he called it hollow ground. I'm sure he did it on a wheel, and technically it's probably hollow ground, but
so is it or isn't it? I'm sure he did it on a wheel. I guess technically it's hollow ground. It is absolutely hollow ground. You just made the accusation that one side is convex, which is the opposite of hollow. So which is it?
Whatever he had to do to probably fix or try and straighten the edge or do something else, it's no longer hollow, and it certainly is not centered. Now, Steve's talked a really big game about sharpening and has gone so far as to say that no custom knife makers, I'm assuming besides him, know how to hand sharpen. Not a...
Jacob, anybody watching this video, absolutely anybody, I challenge you to find it in text, to find it in writing, to find me ever saying that no custom makers can sharpen their knives. Please, I'd give you $1,000 finding me ever saying anything like that. This is what I don't understand why he does this. Like I've said, he claimed I erased videos, but they're all still online. Everything is up online. I need some receipts for this.
Single one of them, none of them can put a knife to the stones and do a proper edge.
You heard that. I've said that no other knife maker, custom knife maker, can hand sharpen a knife on stones. Somebody give me some proof, please.
They all just will sharpen on their belts. So if we can, when you look
Now, look at that edge bevel. Pay good attention to it.
at this edge, it's pretty good until we start getting to the belly here, and you'll see a lot of variation in the sharpening up there closer to the belly. And we are also uneven. This knife
Now, remember that. Oh, wait, hold on.
allegedly has cut a few pieces of cardboard and one piece of nylon, and it is dull, specifically at the last half of the blade.
Remember, here's the gentleman that bought the knife. Here's Heavyset Tactical. This is the guy. Okay? This is the one. Let's look at what the actual owner of the knife said when he got it.
What's up, guys? John from Heavyset Tactical over here. This is a card of authenticity that came with a knife in the mail today. I have a lot of single pieces from smaller makers, and
pay attention to the edge bevel, pay attention to the finish of the blade, and pay attention to that spine. And we're going to look at it again in another video.
I've never experienced one of Steve Kalari's knives. So this is the tried and true. It's in CPM D2 at 64 Rockwell. And it is just a very, very cool knife. It is not like any other kind of everyday carry 3.5, 4 inch, 3.5 inch fixed blade that I have ever had. And the reason...
Do you see any scratches up towards the plunge line on the finish of that blade?
When Steve talked about what he had available...
Look at the spine. Do you see any of that variation like you saw, all that bad, it looked like rough grinds on the spine like you see in his video?
Well, we were just discussing that I hadn't ever even handled one of his knives. This was in D2, and CPM D2 is one of those steels that...
Whoops. Do you see, look at the finish of that, up there by that plunge where my maker's mark is. Do you see anything? Look at the edge bevel.
Has always had a bad rep from Chinese, really, really cheap Chinese folders that say D2, but they aren't really real D2. So this is real CPM D2, which is a tool steel, and I'm actually really excited to test it out. This thing is... That noise is one of the sharpest, terrifyingly sharp. But it's really nice and thin behind the edge, almost a full flat. Beautifully done handles. One thing I will say about Steve Kalari is that look at that edge. Steve Kalari's knives are always going to be super slicey. That's one. And the second thing is his handles are always so beautifully finished.
No mention of a hot spot being inside like an unchamfered lanyard tube. Zero. Now, this is just the beginning. Maybe he didn't use it, right? So we'll wait for the next video.
And this is just a really, really beautiful knife.
Look at those spines.
Honestly, very comfortable in hand. Got a good perch. It's got that Warncliffe kind of sheep's foot.
Remember, John is also a knife maker. He's handled tons of knives. He worked with and co-owned Survive Knives at one point. Remember that. He's a knife maker.
Vibe going on there. Almost would kind of make a cool like dive knife style blade. But yeah, really slicey. It's going to be a great cutter. And I'm actually truly excited. I have not had good like hand-done custom D2, it's real CPM D2 to test before. So it was a cool little project, and we happened to get to talking. So I'm excited to share this knife, and thank you very much to Steve Kalari.
Let's listen to what the customer said about the knife.
Dude, this thing is so, how do I say it? You know, it's really funny, man. The one tiny issue with your Kydex, sometimes if you put the knife in straight on, it's a little funny, so you kind of have to like point it upwards a little bit, you know? I have that every time I've tried to do a different knife shape on my Kydex press, dude. That same thing happens when I try to do a taco, and I never have it happen with my what's it called, my my pancake. Jeez. But yeah, the knife is just so elegant, dude. Oh my god, it's just your handles, you know, just the fit and finish, everything just looks so, just presented so well. I am very impressed. And this blade shape is so great. It's just like you can get a purchase anywhere on this knife. I'm gonna everyday carry this in my daily carry videos for like the next week, and really just kind of show everybody that might not follow you, or you know, sometimes different people have different people following them, even though we're, you know, in the same world. I'm excited to show people this knife, dude. This thing is like crazy comfortable, super slicey, just really elegant.
Elegant. He would classify it as elegant. Now keep in mind, John and Jacob are friends. John is someone who Jacob says makes really good knives and recommends his knives. John makes good knives. John's a knife maker who makes good knives and just called my knives elegant. Said the fit and finish was superb. This is the feedback I'm getting from the customer, who's also a knife maker. Let's see what else he had to say.
Oh, dude, honestly, man, this knife is so fucking cool. I had a whole bunch of belts and other things come in the mail today, and I just opened all the packages with this little thing. This fucking thing is awesome, dude. Really, it is just way cool. I'm actually really digging it. I'm looking at it, and honestly, dude, it sounds so funny to say, but I wish I never started making shit with removable handles, because the pins look so fucking good and so flush and tight, and I just can't get that with my style of handle scales. It's just not the same, you know what I mean? And those the bronze pin, or the bronze pin, it looks like bronze or copper in the back, is so fucking such a beautiful little accent. Dude, this honestly might be like my favorite everyday carry fixed blade I may have ever gotten. And that's saying something. I've fucking had them all. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you, man, this thing is not leaving my pocket for a long time.
So, even made mention of the fit and finish on the pins, and even spoke about the lanyard tube, how flush everything was. No mention of a burr. No mention of nothing being chamfered. Matter of fact, said how well the chamfering is done. But remember, Jacob said that knife came to him. How that knife came to him is how I sold it and how it arrived to Mr. John of Heavyset Tactical here. Let's look at another video.
For the first time today, boys, we are doing my... blade. In the pocket, in a nice little Kydex sheath, we got the...
Look at the spines. Again, look at the spine. Look at the blade. Look at the edge bevel.
These both just came in today. This is the Steve Kalari Tried and True. That's the model name. A very sharp spine.
Look at that edge bevel. Does that edge bevel look like the same width as the one in the video?
Nice acid wash. This is called Ninja Turtle micarta with a brass tube through it for your lanyard hole. Very nice touch.
Look at that spine. you see how smooth it is? Up there you can see where he just rubbed his finger across on it, but the rest of it, do you see how smooth that is? It's a 400 grit finish. Does that look like what you saw in Jacob's video?
It looks like natural micarta liners. Just beautiful. Very well done. A lot of nice handwork here. He left that nice deep belt satin in, maybe with like a 120 grit, it looks like. And then acid washed it.
Do you see any marks by that where my maker's mark is? Again, I'm going to harp on this. And again, look at the edge bevel. Because the knife, again, there's no problem with critiquing my knives on anything. But if you're going to say that this is how the knife was received and not actually go look at John's story to know that he posted this knife when he got it, and we can all clearly see what the knife actually looked like when it arrived, I don't believe that the knife, how he's presenting it, is how I sold it. I believe the edge was modified. I believe the spine was modified to make it off-center, make it look off-center like that. And I believe he did something to scratch up the finish.
This is CPM D2. I actually had a conversation with him about him. He was using D2 for these knives. I saw it on a post, so I started talking to him about it. And I told him, ironically enough, I've always loved the tool steels, and I never had real well-done CPM D2. So this thing is terrifyingly sharp and slicey, and it is in CPM D2, and we're going to test it out. I'm going to see how that steel fares, because I think it got a bad rep right off the bat, and I don't believe in what everybody else knows. You know what I mean? I want to test my own, get my own results for it.
Look at that edge bevel. I'm going to say it again. Look at how small that edge bevel was. Because I can tell you right now, when this knife went out, it was about 4 thou behind the edge, and his measure is 6 because the bevel's wider. Look at that edge bevel, and then look at the one where Jacob had, and I'll show you a side-by-side.
So we're going to check it out.
Let's hear some more.
Oh, dude, no, I don't really have like an issue with the Kydex. I always make pancakes like 2-piece Kydex because I just suck at making taco sheaths. That fold over it fucking gets me every time, man. Honestly, Steve, it's so funny because like
the reason he's talking about the sheath is he meant there was an issue with the sheath. I didn't know what a pancake sheath was, and I was taking his criticism to potentially change the sheath if there was an issue.
I can make a knife start to finish, in very little time, but I can't make a fucking Kydex sheath. Like, it drives me crazy. It's just always way too tight or way too loose. I tried it with 3 pieces of painter's tape over it. Nice and perfect, long ways, cut it with an X-Acto knife out around it. Nice. But I tried 3 pieces, tried 2, tried 1, tried the eyelets at a 1/4 inch away, tried them less, tried them more. And it just never comes out right. I don't know what the hell I'm doing wrong. Got a toaster oven out in there and everything, and a nice Jantz Kydex press and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, dude, honestly, I fucking like this. Like, I knew I was going to like your work. I've always liked your style and aesthetically. But, like, this knife is fucking fantastic, dude. It is a fan-fucking-tastic everyday carry knife for $300 that's hand done. Like, and the brass or the copper tube or bronze tube, whatever it is, the copper tube on the back just gave it that little kiss on the end, that.
So 3 times now he's mentioned that copper tube and how much he likes it. Not once has he said there was any burr or anything standing up. And the reason for that is because there wasn't. I don't know if he ran a file through it or what he did to create that burr, but it had nothing to do with when I sent the knife out. Obviously, like I said, it would be impossible for me to not chamfer those. They're in the handle scales before I shape the entire knife.
Little plate decoration on a perfect steak that it's just, dude, it's fucking comfortable. It's light. It's functional. It's super slicey, and it doesn't have an annoying tip to kind of get caught on things or poke yourself with. I've really been coming to appreciate and enjoy like Warncliffe stuff. And I'm not sure if this is a sheepsfoot or a Warncliffe or a reverse Tonto or whatever the fuck. Everybody has names these days for things. But I don't know what you'd classify it as, but I think it's just the bee's knees, dude, and I really love it, man. Even the sheath is fine.
Loves it. Wonder what else he had to say.
Well, yeah, honestly, dude, it's so funny because I'd rather do pinned-in hardware any day of the week. The only thing that's nice is that doing removable hardware, you know, I can do a nice finish, different kind of finishes on the blade or coat them or whatever. You know, it'd be hard to do that and then try to sand in some scales. But yeah, it's funny. It's really funny because I would rather do pinned-in scales. I think it looks more flush. I think it doesn't let moisture under the scales at all because the epoxy. So, you know, I think there's a lot of gains that people don't look at to having your scales pinned on. You know, it's a seal around the scale, so you're not going to get crud under there and shit. You know, and that epoxy is so nasty, man. Them sons of bitches ain't ever coming off. I don't see what I could do to get those to fucking come off of that knife. You know what I mean?
So he's happy with the build quality as well. Here, hold on. I'll make sure he doesn't say any personal info. Never mind. We're good. Let's see what else he has to say.
Dude, that new tip design is retardedly. It's like sexual. It's like, you know, some kind of like douchebag that has to buy the Cybertruck because it has that look. Your knife has that look. That is one of the most clean, tight angles I've ever seen. I mean, you know, like I'm sure you went through what I'm going through where like it's so funny, but getting straight lines on things like perfectly straight is actually a chore because your platen's only 2 inches wide. It might look straight, but like when you finish the knife out and coat it or not coat it, but like acid wash it or blast it, you're like, oh shit. Like there's a little bit of a bow in the top of that. You know, or here, the angle's not perfect, but dude, that one, whew, that is like my OCD wants me to be like, let me send you this one so you can put that profile on. I know it's a whole nother knife, but wow, man, really impressed with that. And just that shape. I've never seen that shape on a folder or fixed blade before. Like that exact angle, I don't think. Looks so aggressive, but it looks like even without a V edge, it would just slice. You know what I mean? Just really tough, man.
Excuse me while I wipe the slobber off my cock from that. It's sexual. My tip is sexual. You heard that. So again, here's the input I'm getting and the feedback from a fellow knife maker who bought the knife. He paid full price for it, all $299 of it. I didn't pay him to say that. I didn't ask him to say that. This is what he's telling me. So now let's get back to Jacob's critiques.
From people, that is not uncommon. I also wanted to mention behind the edge thickness measured back here. We are looking, I measured it at 6.5 thou behind the edge. It's advertised at 5 thou. My calipers advertise themselves of having up to a 1 thou accuracy. So I'll say that's about right. Getting closer to the tip, we are closer to.
Keep looking at that edge bevel. Let's look at it real quick in a still frame. So there's the edge bevel from his video with the marks up by the maker's mark that he claims was not from Kydex or whatnot. Here's the edge bevel from the video John got. And clearly no scratching up around that edge. So how John received it, how it's being presented as how I received it. Also, it's going to be a little hard to tell, but look at the tip right there. Does the tip look as rounded in this picture as it does in this picture? It's because this knife has been sharpened. I can tell you unequivocally this knife has been sharpened. If I had to guess, it was probably done on an Edge Pro or something like that, or some sort of fixed angle system, and he started to round the tip. See how it curves up aggressively right there? He started to round. It's very common with those kind of things. It's very easy to round the tip. So this is the edge that he said I sent him. Here's the edge that he actually received So John is either lying to him or Jacob is lying. Somebody's lying. You can all see clearly this is not the edge that I sent him with, and clearly I did not send it with scratch marks on there. Nor did I send it with that spine that's uneven and been clearly modified with rougher, you could see the rough grit on it, the rough scratch pattern.
To 7 thou, maybe even 8, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he wanted to get a little extra thickness at the tip, which is also a little bit rounded there.
The reason it's rounded is because either Jacob or John has sharpened this knife. It is clearly not how I sent the knife. But you be the judge of that. You tell me.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you right now, showing edge geometry on a camera is very difficult, and showing grinds on a camera is very difficult, but the pictures don't lie. It's ground heavily off to one side.
Again, I can do a video and maybe I'll put it up there and I'll show Jacob how he can check if the knife is centered, if it's center ground down the spine and if it's centered down the middle. I have no problem with making claims about my knife if they're true. So I'm going to stop the video here. It's 41 minutes already. I don't want to go into an hour. I want people to actually watch this. But you make your judgment on this. Does that knife look like the knife that I sent John from Heavyset Tactical, or does it look like it's been modified? So you'll see it again real quick. Let's just watch this.
We also have
Look at that spine.
general finishing issues, like you probably all.
Do you see that right there? That's what I'm speaking of. Does that look like the video that I showed you from John from Heavyset Tactical when he got the knife and he put it up? Again, guys, you be the judge of it. I'll leave it there. Again, feel free to criticize my knives. I'm always open to criticism. That's how I get better. But if we're gonna sit here and modify my knives and then blame it on me, I can't take that line down. So, see you later, Jacob.